Hey everybody, welcome back to Kurt in Real Time. My name is Kurt and this is In Real Time. And if you are finding these live streams enjoyable, meaningful, whatever adjective you want to add to it, I just encourage you, make sure you go click on the subscribe, click on the notification bell. If you're watching this on Instagram, make sure that you follow me there and make sure you adjust the notifications. And but welcome to another Kurt in Real Time, another specifically a case of the Mondays, where we talk about social justice through the lens of politics and economics. And really, if you're a person who's committed to being real and showing real love and compassion for everyone and everything around you, and if you're also particularly here on this Monday night, passionate about seeing fairness and justice for all through reform in the economic world, then this is the right place for you. So glad to have you with me tonight. And if you are here, say hello in the comments or say something and say hello just so I can see who's here. I'll do my best to respond to any questions and then we'll go from there. Hopefully, over time, more and more folks will start dropping in, and we'll make it a little bit more unpredictable, a little bit more live chaos. Hopefully, you're seeing this on Instagram, getting a notification, but it's too late now. Can't go back. So if you're on Instagram and you saw this, make sure you click on the YouTube link. But okay, with that said, I want to dive into tonight what we want to talk about on this Monday, case of the Mondays. And I wanted to, and there's a reason why I chose that song. Song's very powerful, meaningful to many of us. Hymns, a song written by Macklemore for those who are suffering in Palestine as a result of the genocide that is being carried out every day. The genocide carried out by an apartheid state, the state of Israel, with the monetary and military backing of the United States of America and a number of other Western countries. And I say all of that as somebody, as most people know, is also a combat veteran. So I've seen war. I've seen war up close and personal. And I've worked with refugees who have suffered from war and violence. And it breaks my heart to see what is happening in Gaza. So with that said, let me jump in. The things that I want to talk about today is three things we're going to look at. One is, where's the red line? We've heard a lot of conversation about the red line. Where's the red line when it comes to this election, this 2024, and the candidates that we have here in the U.S.? And you could apply this if you're eventually, whether it's now or in the future, you're watching this from another country. If you are entangled in a political system where you are given horrible choices that, as it relates to war and violence, where do you cross where do you stop? At what point do you be like, I can't participate in this. I can't vote for anybody because of this that's being crossed. And there's a quote. We're going to look at a couple of things I posted that I saw last week that really just shook me and just cut straight to the heart of the matter. And I think these are words that we need to seriously reflect on. And for individuals who are weighing their choice this November, I think that this episode and these thoughts, as it relates to the conflict, the violent genocide that's happening in Gaza in particular, really other places around the world. It's just one example, and it's the most prominent example right now because the scale of it is just truly horrific. But our complicity in it, at what point do we say, no, I can't bend to political pragmatism anymore? Then the other thing we're going to talk a little bit about is lovely world of identity theft. Where did I put that? It's somewhere around here. It's okay. I can describe it later on. But when it comes to like our data, our identity, just the information that's vital to us in operating in a modern world, and yet seems so fragile and insecure. I want to talk just briefly about that one. And then I don't know if I got any feedback on this yet, so I might kick the can down the road a little bit. But I would like to make a part, kind of a regular installment on our Case of the Mondays, because I do like talking about work, like talking about modern work and that system and how the effect that it has on us as human beings, not just resources. You know, it's interesting. You ever thought about that? Human resources. It's like it's in the name. That we're viewed ultimately as a resource for what? And so I like talking a lot about work. For more like on a lighter side of things, for shits and giggles, but also to remind us of just how fucked up things can be for, certainly I'll speak to my worker, and I think it's for many, many people out there who are working in a capitalistic society or system in order to meet their most essential expenses. It's also a way to laugh and then let that laughter turn to rage and a commitment to make to advocate for real change and to resist the systems that are in place that are causing so much harm to so many people. So those are the three things we're going to talk a little bit about tonight. But first, let me go to let me talk about Gaza and where is the red line when it comes to this November. So, in all transparency, let me just talk about my political affiliation over my lifetime. I grew up, as most of you know, in a very conservative, evangelical, white Christian household and religious community. Well, basically, like evangelical Christianity is a white religion. You'll find some examples, some of the exceptions to the rule out there, and it's painful for them. Ask Black Southern Baptists how they're feeling about the Southern Baptist Convention after the first round of the Trump administration. We'll see if there's a second, but ask them how they feel. And if they're honest about it, what I've read and what I've heard, that it was painful. And it revealed a lot of just inherent racism within within evangelical Christianity that is inescapable. So, but I grew up in that environment. We were all about the Republican Party, all in, like, because you got to remember, I was born in 1974. So this is already the religious right. It started to pivot and basically activate politically in ways that they hadn't done before, to assume the mantle of one particular party, this being the Republican Party, to make it the flag of conservative Christian nationalistic ideals. That was the goal. And anyways, like I remember going over to my great aunt and uncle's house to watch the election results come in the 1984 election. One of the largest political landslides in U.S. presidential election history, maybe the largest. I'm not a historian on that, but certainly in my lifetime, around my age or a little bit older, you'll remember the 1984 election, Ronald Reagan versus Michael Dukakis. By the way, the first, to my knowledge, that was actually the first election where there was a woman on the ticket, the vice president that year. Why am I blanking on her name? It's horrible. Michael Dukakis' running mate. But it was a landslide. Like if you were to look, for those of you in the U.S. context, the Electoral College comes out and they always color, states red or blue. And it was a wash of red, including even states that you are typically in more recent presidential election history are blue, like California. Everybody it was a massive landslide. And I remember going over to my great aunt and uncle's house in Napa County, And I was a kid. I was like, so what have I been? I was like 10 years old, and we were coloring in the map as whoever was, I can't remember who the news anchors would have been at that point in time, were coming on saying, we're calling this state, we're calling that state. And I was filling in it, and we celebrated. Like, Reagan was a god. He was God's man in Christian evangelical circles, much like they have applied that moniker to Donald Trump now. Like, he's God's man, like literally God's man. Like, God is involved in all of this and has picked him out for such a time as this, right? So that was a huge part of my influence, of my political party. I voted almost predominantly Republican a huge chunk of my life, because I thought that was that was the party that aligned best with God's ideal and vision. And that started to fall apart maybe a little bit before that, but particularly after I served in the Army post 9/11, deployed overseas. That was an utter shit show that we can talk about. Very short, long story short, some of you know that I ended up in the craziest of ways, somehow on one of the primary units responsible for looking for weapons of mass destruction in Iraq, which was the whole premise for that war, the whole justification for that invasion of that country, was built on the premise that Saddam Hussein and his, they had access to nuclear, biological, chemical weapons, and they were going to sell them off or collaborate with Osama bin Laden and Al Qaeda and decimate the U.S. with these horrible, dirty bombs in New York City or Los Angeles or wherever it might be, or spreading chemical weapons in places. That's the world. So I was on one of the teams, literally a team that was depicted in a major motion picture, The Green Zone, with Matt Damon, who my chief was an advisor on that film, along with another friend of mine who was another member of that unit. But to go from like this idyllic mind or perspective that America was really, next to Israel, was God's country, and had a divine mandate, and it had been attacked, and we had to defend ourselves. And this kind of inherent assumption in my mind that our leaders would never lie to us, would they? About something that big? Never. And then, as everybody knows, we didn't find shit. And I remember coming back from, and privately, it was interesting, or it was disturbing. It was unsettling to me to see how steadfast the allegiance was in my religious community, the evangelical Christian community, to a political party and an ideology and a whole system of militaristic, kind of backdoor colonialism. And it started to unravel things. And it led to a lot of other things unraveling, to the point where I was like, I can no longer adhere to the Christian religion. First, it was evangelical Christianity. Eventually, it was Christianity or religion in general. I could not adhere to it anymore because of logical fallacies, the hypocrisy, the violence, a whole host of things. So it was not that long after that, because you'll remember that, George W. Bush was president from 2000. At least they said the Supreme Court president in 2000. He won re-election in 2004. And then in 2008, we had Obama run for office. And he was 2008 to 2012, then re-elected 2012, 2016. Both of those elections, and I remember because I was very much still a part of the evangelical community, mind you, but it was not that long after I got back from Iraq in the next couple of years that I officially left I stopped being a registered Republican. And those next two election cycles, President Obama. I didn't even feel like, you want to know how crazy it is in the evangelical cult house. I couldn't even be out public about that. And a little bit shameful. I wish I'd been more vocal. It grew over time as I became more and more unsettled and more confident in who I was, my own voice. But that's when I started to pivot. Then I eventually became a registered Democrat, and I'm still technically a registered Democrat. And as somebody who is a passionate advocate for peace as a result of my experiences, both in the military, serving overseas in a war zone, and then working for the better part of a decade with refugees from across the world, I become a very passionate advocate for peace, for nonviolence, to challenge the military-industrial complex. That'll be a whole subject of other future live streams. But then, so here I am. I wasn't, like a lot of people, thrilled about Biden. Bernie Sanders was the person who most closely aligned with my values and the policies that I wanted to see and laws I wanted to see implemented in this country that I felt would be the most compassionate and supportive of every citizen, and not just serving more and more so the elite. And but that didn't happen, and I voted for Biden because, right? Who else am I going to vote for? I'm going to vote for Trump. Obviously, I didn't vote for him the previous time. Anyways, so though I voted for Hillary Clinton, I remember that night very vividly, because not that I'm the biggest fan of her as well in some ways, and even more so as it relates to what we're going to be talking about, which is the military-industrial complex, which is America's abhorrent history of actively carrying out acts of violations of the rules of warfare itself, or enabling other countries to do so. But I voted when it came to the last election. I pinched my nose, like a lot of people, the lesser of two evils, right? And I voted for Biden. Then we all know what's happened over the last year. And there's a lot of other people, honestly, that you should be listening to. You should be listening to the voice of Palestinians, those who call Gaza home, those who identify with the Palestinian people. They're the most important voices. Then there are other voices, allies, who are trying to use their position, their platforms, to stand alongside of them. That would be me. That's who I am. I'm standing as an ally to and a supporter of the Palestinian people as they survival and existence against not a country that has been framed very intentionally through a lot of very crafty messaging. And I know it because, again, I grew up in the evangelical Christian world, served in the evangelical Christian world. The rhetoric around Israel is off the charts in the evangelical world. And that is why we have the political party, or the political platforms that we have today, where no party wants to even touch that, is because even amongst the large evangelical voting bloc, or even the moderate Americans, they've been so inundated with this rhetoric for so long that literally there's nothing that Israel could potentially do wrong. There's little chinks in that now, because it took this horrendous level of violence for some people to start to see that, like, okay, not be doing the right thing by supporting this rogue government's actions. And by the way, I'll say that as somebody who is an advocate for peace. Yes, I abhor violence. I don't care who carries it out. And if people were murdered in last October, kidnapped, none of it is justifiable. But it's this Though I will say this, it's understandable in some regards because a lot of people also do not understand and do not try to place themselves in the feet of those who are suffering under an apartheid regime for decades, suffering, being beaten, killed, oppressed in ways that we can't even fathom. We honestly can't, in American context in particular, we cannot fathom. Some people can fathom in our country. If you're a black or brown person, you're used to being the victim of systemic injustice and racism and exploitation. But if you're somebody like me, there's really no frame of reference. There's no reference point. So it's only something that we have to get a glimpse of over time as we listen and listen and listen and watch and see suffering and pain and listen to the stories and listen to the cries of those who are suffering. So this is all going somewhere. Thank you for hanging in there as I'm walking through this with you. So I've been in both political worlds, and that's the point. And I saw a couple of posts, and I want to bring them up here and look at these. This first one really shook me, and I think it's something that I if I could take every American and just say, will you just stop what you're doing for 30, 45 seconds and read this? And then maybe just give it like 5 minutes just to think about it, especially as it relates to this upcoming election in November. It would be this. So this person says, I'm not stupid. I know a third party will not win this election. Tell me why I should be voting for either one of the major two parties when they both support the genocide that is happening now to my family in Palestine. Explain it to me without telling me Trump will be worse, because my family may not make it till January with the escalations on the West Bank, because now there's the violence and the extremism is starting to transition swiftly from Gaza to the West Bank. They go on. Tell me how I'm supposed to support a government that uses my tax dollars to kill my families. Speaking of that, you might recall last week we talked about $735.65. It was something like that. I can't remember the exact amount of what I estimated was the amount that I had contributed in my payroll taxes to the Department of Defense budget for this year through the month of August. And knowing that some of that money is going to give weapons and aid to a government that is killing, that is carrying out a genocide. So they say, please explain to me, and this is the last part, please explain to me how this shouldn't be my red line. So I have a question, and I'm going to pose this one particularly to Democrats. By the way, I love the idea of women, particularly women, being in positions of power. Like I actually have a little idea that I'm noodling around of starting a new website specifically for men who want to advocate and stand alongside and support women who are running for elected office. And I think it's ridiculous that at least 50%, I think at least 50% of every elected office in this country, from federal down to state and local, I think it should be women. We don't need any more white, middle-aged, or older, in some cases, much older. Mitch, you hear me? Freaking dinosaur old white men calling the shots. We've had our fucking turn. We fucked it up good. Okay, you're fired. I'm going to steal a line from Donald Trump. You're fired. I want to see. That part of it I love and I celebrate. And if it happens and it's celebrated that a Black woman of color, also with an immigrant background, is the head of state of the United States. Great. But I really feel what this writer says, this Palestinian, grieving over the fact that do we understand what we're asking someone like her to do when we're saying, well, listen, but 25 and all this other shit, and it'll be horrible, like Handmaid's Tale, all that stuff, which all might be very true. Right? I have a gay daughter, and I have family and friends that are trans, and I fear for the world that they will live in if Donald Trump is elected. But what we're talking about is oppression versus the extermination of an entire people. And what are we asking for someone like the person who wrote these words again? I'm going to put them up because read it again. Where they say, explain to me without telling me Trump will be worse, because my family may not make it till January. Tell me how I'm supposed to support a government that uses my tax dollars to kill my family. Please explain to me how this should be a red line. So as somebody who's still a registered Democrat, to other Democrats, how is it that you are not, even if you're like, I'm on the campaign, I'm supporting Kamala and all the way, how are you not going and sending the message uniform, like across the party, an overwhelming majority saying, we're not voting for you, the whole undecided movement, we're not voting for you unless you come out and you say arms embargo now. The moment I get into election or get elected and I'm sworn into office, that pipeline of weapons of violence and money to support their acquisition of more weapons of violence to kill an entire people, you're not getting my vote. I watch, I'll try to drop a link to her Instagram and YouTube handle. I am Blakely. She's great. Love her takes. She's really, like you said, in terms of another ally, she's a white woman from New York City. And I love listening to her. And she talks a lot about, like, you got to earn my vote. Why is it that we up on this? And then I saw another similar one. I'll pull up this other quote. And this one says from Chuck Mode I Won, hashtag Stop Cop City. He says, my election prediction is this, and I think this is 100% true. My election prediction is if Trump wins, we will protest, disrupt, boycott, strike every day to end the genocide and occupation in Palestine. And if Kamala wins, we will protest, disrupt, boycott, strike every day to end the genocide and occupation. Either way, the killing is going to continue unless Democrats actually grow moral conviction backbone and en masse start sending messages to Kamala Harris that absolutely not, you are not getting my fucking vote until I hear you say, this is a genocide, it's wrong, these people have a right to exist, we're not sending them any more financial and certainly no more military aid while they're carrying out this genocide. Period. It's over. The moment I'm elected. Why isn't that happening? Where's your red line? Democrats. Something to think about. Man, I don't even know if I want to talk about the next thing that I had on there. It just doesn't even seems trite in comparison. I'm not going to do it. I'll cover it another time. Identity theft. It's not worth talking about right now, especially with what we've just finished talking about. So I almost feel like I just think we should. I want to sit with that. I want to sit with that, and I hope that if you're watching this, or you watch it when it's posted on YouTube, that you'll just sit with that for a little bit, especially if you're, in this case, a Democrat. Republicans, I'll let you do your own house cleaning. Where's your red line? Certainly wasn't on the issue of racism. Certainly wasn't on the issue of actual democracy, because you are fleeing to an authoritarian like it's nobody's business. But I'm not a Republican now. But as long as I'm still technically, as of right now, we'll see how long that lasts, a member of the Democratic Party, where's our red line on Gaza and as it relates to this election? Because after some modest posturing at the beginning of her campaign, it's become very clear where Kamala stands as of right now. And that is that she's completely fine with the genocide carrying on if she is elected under her own watch. What else has she said to lead us to believe that that's not the case? So I'm with the folks who are undecided, and I might just stay that way. I might vote for somebody like Jill Stein or somebody else. I know that they're not going to win, but maybe if the numbers come out afterwards, and if Democrats have to lose again, and we got to go down the rabbit hole with Donald Trump, I'm just telling you right now, Gaza's a red line for me. I'm not compromising on that. All right. Listen, everybody, thank you for those of you who joined. I'm going to close again with Hens Hall. I'm going to put that on, just let it play for a little bit, and then close out this live stream. I'll see you on Wednesday for another live stream. Just look on Instagram. The link is already up on YouTube. So if you go to my channel, you click on live streams, you'll see that it's upcoming. Just click on it and click on notify me, and I'll hop on and join me at noon on Wednesday. I don't feel like talking much about what's going to come on that because it's a very different subject, and we're just going to finish on reflecting about Gaza and where our red line's at. That said, I don't know if I'm even going to say I hope you have a good night. I hope you have a meaningful night of reflecting on the red line. Everybody,